about modernism. The philosophical movement of modernism reflected the vast and rapid transformation of Western society at the turn of the 20th century. Modern art provides some of the most poignant and seminal examples of modernist beliefs. Modern art movements, commonly given the suffix "ism", were characterised by exclusive groups of avant-garde artists, exultant manifestos, and the active rejection of traditional art practices. Movements such as Cubism, Futurism, Suprematism, and Constructivism sought a new alignment with the experiences and values of modern industrial life, while Expressionism, Dada, Surrealism, and Abstract Expressionism explored the power of emotional, psychological, and mystical phenomenon. Various meta-narratives were concurrent throughout these movements, such as the utopian society, the secular state, the emancipation of the working class, and the importance of individualism. These were heroic modernist pursuits, yet were impossible to fully actualise. Let's explore how these ideas are represented in iconic works of modern art. At the turn of the 20th century, the modern industrial world was taking shape. Skyscrapers erupted in major cities. Factories mass-produced everything from light bulbs to automobiles. Political revolution had taken grip in parts of Europe, and 2 world wars would drastically shape the course of history. Amidst all of this, architects made blueprints for utopian cities, such as futurist architect Antonio Sennelièr's City Futura and celebrated French architect Le Corbusier's design for Paris, which was reminiscent of haussmannisation in the 17th century. These projects would never be realised. Even on a small scale, Le Corbusier's apartment block, Unité d'Habitation, quickly became a squalid ruin. In painting, post-impressionists such as Vincent van Gogh, Paul Gauguin, Georges Seurat, and Paul Cézanne had developed experimental approaches that inspired every subsequent modern art movement, beginning with Fauvism, which translates to the wild beasts. Fauvism was most well known for the use of unnatural colour and the simplicity of form. Henri Matisse was a notable Fauvist whose style was characterised by his fluid draftsmanship, his expressive use of colour, and flattened formalism, which profoundly influenced Expressionist painting. It's time for a tip-top term. Avant-garde, a French term that was traditionally the part of an army that goes forward ahead of the rest. When applied to art, avant-garde means art that is innovative, introducing or exploring new forms, styles, or subject matter. Picasso's Demoiselles d'Avignon, with its African source material, hacked contours, and interrogating gaze, is still a disturbing painting. In the foreground appear a crouching figure in a bowl of fruit. These forms are drawn angularly, not roundly modelled with chiaroscuro. This is the beginning of Cubism. While Picasso was painting in Paris during the summer of 1908, Braque, at the other end of France, near Marseille, was painting a series of landscapes. No connection existed between the two artists. Yet by an entirely different route, Braque arrived at the same point as Picasso. They developed what came to be known as analytical cubism, considered to run from 1908 to 1912, characterised by a fragmentary appearance of multiple viewpoints, overlapping planes, and neutral colour palette. Synthetic cubism is the later phase of cubism, generally considered to run from about 1912 to 1914, characterised by simpler shapes, brighter colours, and the use of collage materials. Italian futurists included Russolo, Carrà, Marinetti, Boccioni, and Severini. Futurism began as a literary movement. Its founder, Filippo Marinetti, developed experimental sound poems based on noises of war, which was celebrated by the futurists. In Zang Tum Tum, the dynamic rhythms and onomatopoeic possibilities that the new form offered were made even more effective through the revolutionary use of different typefaces, forms, and graphic arrangements that became a distinctive part of futurism. He also conceived a variety theatre. He claimed to be a theatre of amazement, record-breaking, and body madness. In painting, the futurists represented the dynamism of speed and sound with a particular reverence for modern technology. Boccioni's The City Rises captures the group's love of dynamism and their fondness for the modern city. A large horse races into the foreground while several workers struggle to gain control of it, suggesting a primal conflict between humanity and beasts. It's time for a tip-top term. Machine aesthetic. A style that suggests something machine-made, acknowledging industrialization, mass production and engineering. Straight edges, flat surfaces and regular geometric forms characterize the machine aesthetic. Former icon painter Kazimir Malevich endeavoured to create a form of visual language analogous with the utopian pursuits of modernity, suprematism. His 010 exhibition was characterised by a reductive approach to pure geometry and colour. One painting challenged the beliefs and ideologies of Western art like no other, black square. For Malevich, black square is the zero of form. All other icons are derived from the perfect simplicity of black square, such as yellow rectangles, red circle and blue triangle. This new dialect was intended to resonate with the emancipated Russian proletariat and reflect the utopian ideals of Marxism. Alongside Malevich, the constructivist Vladimir Tatlin, whose tower design would not only be 100 metres higher than the Eiffel Tower, its chambers would also rotate. This was a powerful metaphor of dynamism and a dialect of change reflecting the Russian Revolution. Another constructivist, Norm Garbo, used industrial materials such as wire, steel and nylon to create elegant sculptural forms that challenged traditional notions of beauty. Like Futurism, Dada and Surrealism began as literary movements. The writer Hugo Bull founded Dada in his nightclub Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich. His absurd sound poem Karawane was a precursor to contemporary performance art. Max Ernst was another member of Swiss Dada, whose experimental techniques and latent imagery would lead to his absorption into the Surrealist movement. German Dada was overtly political in its opposition to the Weimar Republic. George Gross painted scathing caricatures of politicians, while artists such as Raoul Haussmann, Hannah Hock and John Hartfield developed the technique of photomontage as an immediate and derivative social critique. It's time for a tip-top term. Ready-made. The term ready-made was first used by French artist Marcel Duchamp to describe the works of art he made from manufactured objects. It has since been applied more generally to the use of found objects in art. Duchamp's ready-made fountain is clearly a urinal, yet the artist's signature, retitling and display of the work in a gallery fundamentally challenges the institutions of art. These once utilitarian objects exist in contradiction, once functional, now reduced to the absurd. The writer André Breton was the founder of Surrealism. His numerous manifestos and writing were inspired by Freud's interpretation of dreams and the works of absurdist authors. René Magritte created powerfully photorealistic yet impossible dreamscapes. Backward reflections, incongruent scale and simultaneous day and night disrupt the very essence of reality and posit a disturbing unconscious world. Salvatore Dali's Swans Reflecting Elephants uses the phantom image of a reflection to challenge the truth of sense perception. It's time for a tip-top term. Zeitgeist, a German term translating to spirit of the times, an invisible agent or force dominating the characteristics of a given epoch in history. Expressionism consisted of two German schools. Die Brücke, meaning the bridge, was a Dresden-based group led by Ernst Kirchner. Der Blaue Reiter, meaning the Blue Rider, was a Munich-based group founded by Wassily Kandinsky and Franz Marc. Both schools used symbolism and expressive styles to celebrate a return to nature and experiment with increasingly abstract forms, seen in later compositions by Kandinsky. Abstract Expressionism was the first major art movement established in the United States by a collective of artists known as the New York School. Willem de Kooning and Jackson Pollock were known as action painters for their gestural approach, while Clifford Still and Mark Rothko characterised the approach of colour-filled painters. These heroic works, vastly devoid of subject matter and conventional compositional devices, was zealously promoted by art critics Clement Greenberg and Harold Rosenberg for their liberation of the expressive form of painting. Minimalism, with its reductive formalism and pop art's exploration of pop culture, signify the end of modern art and herald the beginning of the postmodern period. The humble qualities of installation art and contemporary methods of appropriation are inspired by these late modern art movements. That was a very brief overview of modern art. There are so many other artists, architects, designers, writers, philosophers, and filmmakers from various art movements and schools of thought that are encompassed under modernism. Thanks for watching.